My family pranks me by saying my mom is in the hospital on Christmas, so I'd leave my boyfriend's family, but I'm not joking when I cut them out of my life for good. I know today is Christmas, and everyone is probably celebrating with their families, opening gifts, enjoying dinner, and that kind of stuff. But if someone is reading this right now, I would really appreciate an honest response. I need to know if I'm in the wrong here because what happened earlier today has left me completely furious. My family has always been a little special, but I'm not sure if I'm being too sensitive or if they really crossed the line this time. I'm 22 years old, and my boyfriend is 23. We've been together for a couple of years, and he's been my rock through many situations, but I never thought I'd have to rely on him for something like this. My family has always had a peculiar sense of humor, which wouldn't be an issue if it didn't sometimes go too far, so far that not everyone finds it as funny as they do. Especially not me. I guess all of this has been building up for years, but what happened today was the final straw. My family consists of my dad and my 3 siblings, an older sister and 2 younger brothers. They've always been very close and love making all kinds of jokes, some of which border on cruel, but they always justify it by saying, it's just a joke. My dad is the one who usually pushes these so-called pranks the most, and although I try to laugh sometimes so I don't seem like a buzzkill, the truth is, there are times when I just don't feel comfortable with them. To help you understand the kind of pranks they enjoy, I want to share one that really stuck with me because I think it was the start of my emotional distancing from all that humor. It happened a couple of years ago on my grandfather's birthday. He's always been a strong man who took care of us after my grandmother passed away. Despite his grief, he never stopped being there for us, and on his birthday, we all wanted to make him feel special. When it was time for presents, everyone had bought him something, as you would on a birthday. Now that I'm writing this, I realize how obvious that sounds. But when my grandfather opened the gift for my parents, something shifted in the atmosphere. Inside the package was one of my grandmother's sweaters. It was one of her favorite sweaters, and I'm sure he hadn't seen it in years. My grandfather went silent for a moment, and then, unable to hold it in, he started crying. Not just soft tears that sometimes escape, but deep sobs, as if all the pain he'd been holding back since my grandmother's death had finally found a way out. The room became unbearably tense. No one laughed. Not even my parents, who initially seemed to find the joke clever. Seeing my grandfather's reaction, even they realized they had crossed a line. What they thought was a simple prank ended up feeling like torture for my grandfather, as it brought back so many memories. Eventually, they had to apologize, but the damage was already done. And although the tension lessened over time, something changed in me that day. I realized that their jokes could cause far more harm than they wanted to admit. But today, I was the target of their cruel jokes. My boyfriend and I went to my parents' house to celebrate Christmas with them. As usual, we were all together in the living room, opening presents. My siblings and parents were laughing and enjoying the moment, and although I was a little nervous about what might happen, I tried to stay positive. I mean, it's Christmas, right? It's supposed to be a time of peace, love, and joy, not a time to make someone the butt of a joke. Then it was time for me to open my presents. The first one was a big box, the kind that gets your hopes up because it looks like it holds something meaningful. When I opened it, I saw it was an iPad box. My eyes lit up for a second because, even though I hadn't asked for it, the idea of having something like that was exciting. But when I opened the supposed iPad box, all I found inside was a smaller box, and inside that box, there was just a simple discount coupon. It wasn't even a coupon of significant value, just one of those you get at tech stores to encourage you to spend more. My parents' and siblings' laughter filled the room, but I could only manage an awkward smile. I knew this was just another one of their pranks, but in that moment, I started to feel like maybe this wasn't going to end well. The next gift was shaped like a book. I had mentioned several times that I wanted a specific book, one I had been searching for months. When I opened it, I was disappointed to see that it wasn't the book I was hoping for. Instead, I found a milk chocolate bar. What made it worse is that I'm lactose intolerant, something my family knows perfectly well. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't appreciate a chocolate gift, but they gave me something I literally cannot eat. I simply felt like it was another joke at my expense. To make it even worse, my mother had given that very book to my sister. So, it was a double mockery because I don't even know if my sister wanted to read it, but I certainly did. For them to give it to someone else and play a joke on me felt even worse. Then came the last gift. It was a mug, and when I pulled it out of the box, my hands trembled. The mug had big letters on it that read, "The worst daughter in the world." Everyone, except me, burst out laughing. My mother even made a comment about how that mug was perfect for me because I never participated in the family jokes and always took things too seriously. I was silent. I didn't know what to say. The lump in my throat grew larger with every passing second. I hadn't asked for anything extravagant for Christmas, just the book I wanted. I wasn't even expecting anything expensive or impressive, but this wasn't what I had imagined for my Christmas. I knew my brothers hadn't made any gift lists, yet all of them received normal things, no jokes. I was the only one who got these gifts that seemed designed to humiliate me. My father, noticing my expression, tried to ease the situation by saying that next year I should make a more detailed list of what I wanted to receive. As if that could fix the fact that I was the only one who got prank gifts. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to ruin the atmosphere even more, but inside, something snapped. I was furious. I felt attacked and belittled, and the worst part is that my family didn't even seem to realize how much they were hurting me. At that moment, I decided I didn't want to stay there any longer. I told my boyfriend that I preferred to go to his parents' house and spend the rest of the day with them. He, of course, supported me, and we left without saying much more. I turned off my phone during the drive because I knew that if I didn't, I would start receiving messages from my family, and I didn't want to deal with that at the moment. When we got to his parents' house, I felt a bit calmer. We sat down and talked about what had happened, and his parents, always so kind and understanding, reassured me that I wasn't wrong to feel hurt. They even had a gift for me, and it wasn't a joke. It was a beautiful sweater that fit me perfectly, and I truly appreciated it, not just because of the gift itself, but because it felt like a genuine gesture, something my family hadn't given me all day. It's strange to feel more at home with my boyfriend's family than with my own. After a few hours, I decided to turn my phone back on. As expected, I had a ton of messages from my family. My dad and brothers were telling me I had ruined Christmas by leaving, that I couldn't take a joke so seriously, and that I deserved those gifts for never laughing at their jokes. My mother even said that I was the reason the mood in the house had been ruined. But what really hurt me was seeing the family group chat. My parents and siblings had been talking about me in the chat, saying things like I had abandoned them on Christmas, a day that's supposed to be spent with family, all because I couldn't take a joke. The worst part is that several family members chimed in, but not in the way my immediate family expected. They also remembered other times when my parents' jokes had crossed the line, like what they did to my grandfather. So, instead of supporting them, they began to criticize my parents for what they had done to me. This only made my parents angrier. Now, besides being mad at me for leaving, they were also upset that other relatives had taken my side. My mother sent me a message saying that I had ruined Christmas for everyone because I couldn't have a sense of humor. But I don't think this has anything to do with humor. To me, it's more about respect. I feel like I've been the constant target of their jokes and mockery because I never wanted to participate in them. And what happened today with the gifts was simply the culmination of years of being treated as if I were the odd one out in the family for not finding their jokes funny. I don't know if this is some kind of revenge for my lack of interest in their jokes, or if they really thought all of this was funny. But all I know is that it made me feel humiliated and sad on a day that should have been special. So, am I the bad one for leaving? Am I being too sensitive for not finding these jokes funny? Edit 1. My boyfriend didn't receive any gifts from them, which I suppose is good if they were planning on giving him prank gifts too. They just said they didn't buy him anything because they didn't know he was coming, even though they knew for a month that we'd be spending Christmas with them. Edit 2. I did buy gifts for my family. They weren't expensive, but I made sure the week before Christmas to get something for each of them. Update 1. After everything that happened yesterday, I feel like I'm stuck in a mix of anger and frustration that I don't know how to handle. I thought things couldn't get worse, but they did, and it's all because of my parents' pranks. I want to share what happened after I left my parents' house because honestly, I don't know how to move forward with them after what they did. As I mentioned in my first post, we were at my in-laws' house, and after the pranks and accusations from my parents, I tried to relax a bit. Talking with them helped me calm down, and although I was still upset about what had happened, I gradually started to feel more at ease. But then, while we were there, I received a text message from my dad. He said that my mom was very nervous about everything that had happened during the day, that she had gone to lie down in her room to try and calm down, but she had tripped on the stairs and fallen. According to the message, they had to rush her to the hospital. Immediately, panic took over me. Even though I was angry with them, I couldn't help but worry about my mom. The message said she was at a hospital about 30 minutes from my parents' house, in the opposite direction from where we were at the time. The hospital wasn't near my in-laws' house, so my boyfriend and I rushed to get there as quickly as possible. During the whole drive, which lasted over an hour and a half, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom. I didn't know how serious the situation was, and my dad hadn't given me many details, which only made me worry more. I sent several text messages asking how bad it was, but he just kept saying he couldn't respond because he was inside the hospital. I even tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. At that moment, the last thing I thought of was that this could be another prank. Who would joke about something like that? Well, I guess now I have my answer. But at the time, the idea of someone playing around with another person's health, especially my mom's, simply didn't cross my mind. I didn't expect them to go to such extremes. My boyfriend was trying to calm me down during the drive, saying that maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought, but every minute that passed without clear answers only heightened my anxiety. As we got closer to the hospital, I felt more and more anxious. When we finally arrived, we rushed to the reception and asked for my mom. But the receptionist gave us a puzzled look and told us that no one by that name had been admitted. My first thought was that maybe my dad had gotten the wrong hospital. I tried calling him again, but still no answer. My mind was racing, searching for explanations for what was happening. Maybe the situation was so serious that he couldn't answer the phone. Maybe they were at another hospital. Half an hour passed, and I was still trying to reach my dad, worried and confused. Finally, when he answered, the first thing I heard was his laughter. Not nervous laughter or laughter of relief, but full-on laughter, the kind you have when you find something extremely funny. I was speechless for a few seconds before he told me, still laughing, that it had all been a joke. That I had fallen for it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stayed silent for a few seconds, unable to process what he had just said. They made us drive over an hour, in a state of panic, just to tell me it was all a prank? Anger flooded through me instantly. I yelled, telling him exactly what I thought of him, of them, of that cruel and heartless joke. Not only had they ruined Christmas for me earlier with their mean-spirited pranks, but now they had also decided to make me suffer like this. For hours, I thought something terrible had happened to my mom, that she needed help, that I had to be there with her. And all of this just so they could have another laugh at my expense? My dad kept laughing, and that's what hurt the most. He told me they did it because I had ruined Christmas for them, so it was only fair they ruin mine. But they didn't just ruin mine, they ruined it for my boyfriend, who had to drive with me through this nightmare, and for my in-laws, who were left worried after hearing that my mom had supposedly had an accident. I screamed at him, telling him not only was the joke cruel, but it was completely insensitive. They had played with something that should never be taken lightly. What if we had gotten into an accident ourselves, driving fast out of sheer worry? I told him they hadn't just ruined Christmas, but had damaged my relationship with them in a way I didn't know if I could forgive. I said that if they ever had a real emergency, they shouldn't expect me to be there to help because I simply wouldn't believe them. If they thought I was the worst daughter in the world, maybe I should start acting like it. After that, I hung up the phone and blocked every number for my family. I didn't want to hear from them anymore. I left the family group chat so I wouldn't have to read any more of their comments or mocking. What they did was unforgivable, and I'm done being the target of their cruel jokes. My boyfriend and I returned to his parents' house late at night. We were exhausted, both emotionally and physically, but most of all, I was devastated. I felt betrayed by my own family, the people who were supposed to love and support me, especially on a day like Christmas. But instead, they treated me like nothing more than another joke, as if my feelings didn't matter at all. Now it's the morning, and as I write this, I still can't believe everything that happened. We'll be heading back to our city later today, and honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do about my family. The only thing I know is that I need time and distance to process all of this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive them for what they did, but for now, I don't want to have anything to do with them. Update 2. It's been a week since I came back home, and I've had time to think about everything that happened during Christmas. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my last post, because your words helped me feel validated in what I was feeling. Many of you said that what my parents did was wrong on so many levels, and that it was okay if I chose to cut ties with them. Honestly, it's been a relief to read that I'm not overreacting and that I'm not the bad one for making this decision. And I don't just mean the hospital prank, which was obviously horrible on their part, but also the gift prank. Since I came back, I haven't had any contact with my parents. They're still blocked, and even though part of me wonders if they've tried to call or send a message, the truth is, I don't care. Keeping them blocked has been the best decision. It's the safest way to avoid any more cruel pranks or manipulative messages. As for my siblings, I haven't heard from them either. They didn't send me a single message after I left their house following the gift pranks. I don't know if they were part of the hospital prank, though it wouldn't surprise me, considering they've been involved in many other pranks in the past. Right now, I prefer to keep my distance from them as well. Even if they weren't directly involved, they didn't do anything to stop it or support me when it was happening. What has surprised me is the reaction from other family members. After I left the family group chat, several of them called me to ask what had happened. I told them everything in detail, the gift pranks, the fake hospital emergency, and how my parents laughed at me when I arrived at the hospital. The response was immediate. My relatives were outraged, and without hesitation, they removed my parents from the group chat and added me back. They told me that what my parents did was horrible, and some even mentioned they don't want to have any contact with them for the time being. What touched me the most was receiving a call from my grandfather. He doesn't understand much about group chats or technology, but as it often happens in families, news travels fast. He told me that when he found out what my parents had done, he felt completely ashamed and disappointed. My grandfather is a man who served in the Navy, so you can imagine how direct his phone call to my parents was. According to other family members, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. I don't know exactly what he said, but I'm sure my parents felt it. For now, my parents will remain blocked, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. I'm still processing everything, but at least now I know I'm not alone in this. My in-laws, my boyfriend, my grandfather, and some other family members have been an incredible support network during these days. While cutting ties with your parents is a very hard thing to do, I feel more at peace, knowing I don't have to worry about any surprise pranks from them anymore. Update 3. A lot has happened in my life over the last 5 years, but one constant is that I never repaired my relationship with my parents. After the last time I had contact with them, during that disastrous Christmas, I simply decided that the best thing for me was to cut all ties. And honestly, since then, my life has been so much more peaceful, without the constant fear of being the victim of another cruel prank. I haven't spoken to them since, even when, about a year ago, my father had an accident. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to keep him in the hospital for a few days. I found out through a family member who still has contact with them. I'm not going to lie and say I wished I'd been there for him, because honestly, I didn't. What I felt was more of a relief that I didn't have to get involved. What would I have done? Show up at the hospital, only to be the target of another joke about what had happened? I know this time it was real, but that doesn't change things. I've grown so accustomed to the peace I've had without them that the idea of going back into that cycle of cruel jokes simply has no place in my life. It wasn't just my parents I distanced myself from, but also my siblings. They never bothered to take my side or support me, not even after the hospital prank. None of them sent me a message, not even when I walked out of their house that Christmas. I guess, deep down, they were always on my parents' side, justifying the pranks and participating in them. If any of my siblings had been sensible, at least one of them would have reached out to me to show support. But that never happened, and over time, I just came to accept that it was better to stay away from them too. In these years, I've rebuilt my life. I got married, without my parents or siblings there, and it was a decision that brought me peace. I didn't invite them, and they didn't try to contact me to ask if they were included. There was no attempt at a reconciliation from their side, and in a way, I'm thankful for that. I assumed they were angry with me for cutting them off, but that's fine. If I had invited them, they probably would have pulled some kind of prank at my wedding. One of the most important things that has happened in my life is that I became a mother. I had my first child a month ago, but I'm still a little traumatized by all the pranks. When I took the home pregnancy test, I was too nervous to look at the result immediately. I asked my husband to check it for me, and when he told me we were going to be parents, my first reaction was to ask if it was a joke. It was an automatic, almost instinctive reaction, and it made me realize how much all those years of heavy, cruel pranks had affected me. My husband showed me the test, and of course, it was real. But the most important thing is that he completely understood why I reacted that way. He knows I don't want any jokes in my life, not even the small ones. I feel incredibly lucky to have found someone who respects that and doesn't try to trivialize my feelings. However, this update isn't to share the details of my life, but to tell you that my father has tried to contact me. After 5 years of no contact, I got the news through that family member who still talks to them. I'm not sure if it's because they found out I had a child or for some other reason, but the fact is that my father asked for someone to reach out to me. He wants to reconnect, according to what I was told. My immediate reaction was a firm no. I don't want anything to do with them. My first thought was that this could be another prank because, honestly, with them, you never know. My trust in them is so broken that any attempt at reconciliation feels suspicious. The family member who passed along the message doesn't have many details. It's just my father who wants to reconnect, and he hasn't mentioned my mother or my siblings. Which brings me to what I'm feeling now. On one hand, I'm very firm in my decision not to have contact with them. It's been 5 years, and my life has improved so much because they're not in it. But on the other hand, there's a small part of me that wonders if I'm doing the right thing. Now that I'm a mother, I question whether my parents should have a chance to know their grandchild if they genuinely want to change. For now, my answer is still no. I don't want contact with them or my siblings. I don't know if that will change in the future, but for the moment, it's what I need to move forward with my life and protect my family, especially my child, from any negative influence they might bring. So here I am once again asking for your advice. I know in the past I received many helpful comments that made me feel validated in my decision, and maybe that's what I need now. Am I making the right decision by keeping this distance, or should I give them one last chance? Update 4. I've received a lot of comments, and it seems most of you share the same opinion. Staying no contact with my parents is the best decision, especially to protect my son from the heavy pranks and toxic environment I grew up in. It's not that I was ever seriously considering reconciling with them. I just wanted to share and get advice from all of you, which has always been very helpful. I'm clarifying this because some people seem to think I was leaning towards reconnecting with my parents. The truth is, after everything they've done to me, there's no way I would want to expose my child to that kind of behavior. A few days have passed since my last post, and I now have more context as to why my father tried to contact me. I found out through my relative that my parents are going through a divorce. Apparently, the reason my father was the only one reaching out to me is because he and my mother are separating, and my siblings have chosen to side with my mother. From what I've been told, it all started because my father played a prank on my mother, pretending he was cheating on her. In the end, it was just a prank. However, my mother didn't take it well, and it seems like this situation was the final straw for her. From what I can gather, there must be more to it than just this, because even though we've always been a family that thrives on pranks, it's strange that a single prank would lead to divorce. Especially considering that my mother has always been on my father's side in all these pranks over the years. Maybe, as many of you suggested in earlier comments, my parents only found the jokes funny when they weren't the ones being targeted. Maybe my mother couldn't handle being the victim of this prank, or perhaps there were other issues in their marriage that this prank brought to the surface. What's clear is that while I now understand the situation a bit better, it doesn't change my stance. My father probably hoped that, with him being alone and my siblings supporting my mother, I might be his ally or at least take his side. But I'm not on his side, nor am I on my mother's. My conclusion is that I don't want to be on the side of any prankster. I feel more certain now than ever that keeping my distance from both of them is the healthiest choice for me and my family. They can deal with the consequences of their actions, but I refuse to get caught up in it.